For the murder of Miss Millane, I sentence you to life imprisonment. I order that you serve a minimum of 17 years in prison.
Hi everyone, Will here with Focus Live outside the Auckland High Court, joined by Sam Hurley, our court reporter, because Sam, the killer of British backpacker Grace Millane has now been sentenced life with a 17-year non-parole period. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's right, Will. 17 years non-parole. That's exactly what the Crown was asking for. They submitted to Justice Moore, we want 17 years without parole, and then ultimately that's exactly what they got. The defence wanted obviously a lot less. They were asking for a starting point of 12 years and then possibly slight increase for some of the aggravating features of the murder, but ultimately Justice Moore said 17 years.
In terms of the sentencing, talk me through some of the things that the judge brought up. Obviously, the man's childhood, amongst others.
Yeah, so there were a number of letters submitted to the court for Justice Moore to read, both from the killer's family and also the Millane family. The Millane family talked about the anguish they've felt since and the absolute terror that Grace must have gone through in those moments where the life was literally strangled out of her. But also we heard a lot about the background of the killer. His sort of grew up, we know he grew up in Wellington, but
wasn't the easiest life by many standards.
Exactly. We heard that he'd been separated from his mum for several years since childhood, and that at the time of the murder he was completely devoid of any sort of support structure and wasn't in contact with his family.
Let's talk about the environment in the courtroom when the sentence was handed down. Very little emotion from the killer and very little emotion in general from the killer during the case and now the sentencing.
Yeah, it was quite surreal actually, the sentencing itself, because as you know, Will, at the very end of the trial there were a number of people who broke down in tears, namely, almost every juror broke down in tears, a number of police officers, even some journalists did. So there was little emotion today, apart from obviously the Millane family who gave their victim impact statements. But the killer, as you rightly said, showed almost no emotion throughout. There was a period of time where he sort of looked out at himself and maybe contemplating what was happening and started rubbing his head, but no tears at all.
We've actually obviously got some video, I now believe, of the victim statements from Grace Millane's mother and also her brother. Let's take a look at that.
This person did not just take Grace's life, but he took away a piece of my life as well. I've not felt whole since my sister's death. It's tough to carry on life as normal following the destruction of my family. But this one person who rips it apart. How do you carry on with life? We've ripped my family apart, and for what? There is no reason behind this unspeakable act. I will simply miss my little sister for the rest of my life, and this pain will never go away.
I am absolutely heartbroken that you have taken my daughter's future and robbed me of so many more memories that we were going to create. I look at our last family photograph together. Every minute of every day. Last February, I went into a very dark place. I wanted to take my own life. The physical and emotional pain was just too much. But how can I add more pain to my already suffering family? How am I meant to get up and get on with my days, knowing it's just another day? I won't speak to her. Your barbaric actions towards my Grace is beyond comprehension. No life sentence you receive today will match the life sentence without my Grace. But I will do my utmost to ensure that no other family needs to go through what we have endured. I want you to know I don't think of you, because if I did, that means I care about you, and I simply don't. I will miss my darling, Grace, until the last breath in my body leaves me. The laughter, the conversations, the memories. You will never be forgotten, darling. You will always be my sunshine. So true.
Well, obviously a pretty distraught Gillian Millane there. Sam, we talked about very little emotion on the killer's face throughout. There was one point during that victim statement from Grace Millane's mother, he sort of shrugged.
Yeah, that's right. He sort of gave sort of this shrug when Gillian Millane talked about how she doesn't think about him because she doesn't care about him, and he sort of gave this shrug as to sort of say, well, probably fair enough. But that's about as emotional as he got throughout, and obviously when Justice Simon Moore handed down that sentence, he showed again little emotion and was just simply let out of the dock.
We also heard from Scott Baird, the detective who was in charge of the case as well moments ago, a very emotional Scott Baird, as he's kind of been along this whole way. He's been there supporting the Millane family, but also, helping to prosecute this case. Let's watch.
Today's sentencing sees the end of a long and difficult period of time for the Millane family. Even though their lives have been changed forever, we hope with support from family and friends that they can now try in some way move forward with their lives.
Well, that was a pretty understandably emotional Scott Baird there. Sam, the sentence has been handed down now. What sort of a chance of an appeal of this sentence do we think?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, I think there is a chance of an appeal. I think this conviction and sentence will be appealed. I had a chat with Ian Brookie, who's the chief defence lawyer for the killer. He said it was too early to comment about any potential appeal, but I'm sure that in the coming months we will find out if in fact they do decide to appeal both conviction and or sentence.
Interesting enough, during the sentence there was a word from Justice Moore to his defence team, given the environment that we live in, and they've taken a lot of heat for defending this man, right?
Yeah, they have, and quite wrongly, I should add. Throughout the trial and even well before the trial, there was a lot of public hate directed towards particularly Ian Brookie as the chief defence lawyer. That was completely unwarranted. I mean, he's a very
job.
Exactly. He's a very well experienced job and a very clinical operator, and he put forward, as Justice Moore said, a very appropriate defence and one that needed to be heard.
The question on everyone's lips, I imagine, at this point, and has been throughout the trial, is there ever going to be a point where we can name this killer?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question that we know is on everyone's minds and has been for some time now. I would suggest, yes, we will find out at some point in the future who this killer is. However, we can't go into the reasons as to why we can't name him now, or potentially the reasons he does have no suppression.
All right, hopefully it's now all over for the Grace Millane's family. I guess Scott Baird said it best, where they have a life sentence, right? And now, at least in the eyes of the court, for now, so too does the killer. We'll have developments on this at nzherald.co.nz and be here as well on Facebook Live. Bye.